Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is a really informational and important topic that we're going to be having our guest Leslie Dixon speak about today. The birds and the bees, and why it's important to talk about that with our children. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about Leslie first. She's the executive director and founder of the Birds and the Bees Connection, and is the mother of 2 grown children and has been a school nurse for more than 20 years. She holds a degree in nursing and has taught family life, life science, health science, and sexual health education at several schools in Orange County and LA. And her unique comprehensive parent-child preparation for puberty and adolescence courses have been taught since the early 90s throughout Orange County and Los Angeles, and are currently being offered to selected school districts, youth groups, and religious organizations. She's been interviewed and quoted in the Orange County Register, OC Family Magazine, and was recently featured at a PTA state convention. She's spoken in Laguna Beach School Districts and the Orange County Department of Education, and she does also private small group courses for parents and or parent-child, so you have a more intimate setting and you can ask more personal questions with her through those. So she has information about that in the back, and I'm just going to hand it over to her and let her get started. Thank
you. Good morning, everyone. Everybody here ready to talk about the birds and the bees? So, as Cheryl said, my background is a school nurse, and for me, going into schools and teaching family life education, and I would go in and teach them for the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and what I found is they are really curious. They have lots of questions. And then what I would do is I say, okay, I want you all to go home and talk to your parents. And I know, they all went home and said, Mom, Dad, I just took a puberty class. Let's sit down and have a conversation. And I found out that wasn't true. And so this happened a long time ago, and I really knew at that point, and this is all leading into what we're going to talk about today, and that's why you're here, is that you really are the most important people in their lives. And you're the people I want them to go to. So, as Cheryl said, what I do now, the main part of my business is really parent-child programs. We start parent programs as young as 0 to 7, and then we start our regular programs in 4th grade. So, before I start with my Prezi over here, I want to take a poll. All right, so how many here have children on the younger side? Anywhere from 0 to 7. Okay, all right, so we have youngers. And how many do we have from 4th grade to 5th grade? Okay, so it's about the same. And how many have the middle schoolers? How many middle schoolers? Congratulations. And how many have the high schoolers? Okay, so a little, it's from 0 to about middle school, we have a smattering of everybody. Okay, so I want to start first. So we're talking about the need, and it's always that, how do you start the talk? And there is no talk. You're going to hear me say that over and over again. Everybody says to you, the talk. There is no talk. What is there? Instead of a talk, what are we having? What do we have? We're having a coffee break. Maybe that's the way we should start with them. It's an ongoing conversation. So what I'm going to start with is the need. What is the need out there? It's pretty obvious. Next slide. So one of the needs, oh, that's a nasty picture. What is that a picture of? Not hormones. Not a hormone picture. Not eggs. It is bugs. Okay? And I'm going to show you 2 statistics. This one is 9.1 million teens contract sexually transmitted diseases each year. And so we know that this is the statistic that's out there. And this is the statistic, as a health educator, I want to decrease. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the average age to lose your virginity is what? What do you think the average age nowadays for our teenagers, well, I sort of gave that away, our teenagers to lose their virginity? Not everyone, don't worry about it. But what's the average age? What do you think? For boys, what is it for boys?
14.
Yeah, 15.5 is for boys, okay? For girls? 13, so it's 13 for girls. It's 16 for girls, 15. But see, you've gone to the next part. So so between 14 and 16, now that's vaginal sex. I'm already on those words. So I'm starting to use those words. Don't worry, it's going to get more, don't worry, you know. Okay, so we've already said vaginal, okay? Okay, and I might actually say masturbation too, okay? So 14 to 16, vaginal sex. Now, if I were to say oral sex, what would the number be? It's the average that we're seeing is middle school, okay? So the need is education. And education, we see it in our schools, academic education. This is a different type of education. Okay, let's move on. So now what I want to do is I'm going to backtrack a little bit. And I want to address that there is a correlation between self-esteem and sexuality. So the very first question is, when does self-esteem begin? And if you've taken any of my courses, one of the courses that's one of the questions. When does self-esteem actually begin in one's life? The other thing you will find out is I'm going to ask you questions. So this is not about me talking, that this is a question and answer period as well. So when do you think self-esteem begins in one's life? Not when we become... I'm trying to keep her awake. She's very tired. Okay? I told her I would do that. Okay, so she's right, Alex is right, it's birth. Why? What do we need at birth? Now I always say, what do you imagine? We've been living in this warm environment for 9 months. You know, the water is warm. It's sort of, like going to the beach, and it's safe and it's protected, and all of a sudden you are yanked out into this light world, and they're taking pictures to put you on Facebook when you're just 2 seconds old. What does a baby need? Immediately, what do they need? What do they need? Contact, holding, so they feel what? Loved and protected, safe. All those things from the very, very beginning. And that's sort of an internalization. Really and truly, it begins in utero, but definitely at birth. Does anyone know what it's called when babies don't get that? We have a terminology now. Anybody know?
Reactive attachment disorder.
Correct, attachment disorder. And so from even preemies, even those teeny tiny preemies get touch. So touch is very important. And that's going to sort of weave back in when we talk about our middle schoolers and teenagers when they don't want to be touched, but they really do, and that they really need it. So there's always this weaving. Okay, so at birth, what role does sexuality play at this stage? Okay, when does it peak? Sorry, when does it peak? When does peer pressure or self-esteem peaks at 9 for girls? Does that sort of surprised us? Does it surprise you? Why? Why are we seeing it peaking at 9? What do you think's going on in their life? What are they seeing? What are they visually seeing, and then how does it affect their self-esteem? What are they seeing? You're going to answer all my questions, aren't you? Okay, are you an educator? Are you a doctor? Yes.
Fashion, trends.
Right. Right. It's all that external visualization that they're seeing. Okay, is there a statistic for boys? What do you think what age it would be for boys? We've got 9 down. What age would it be for boys? 11, 15. There is no statistic. We went looking for it, there was no statistic. And what you're going...
sorry for the question. When you say peak, do you mean that that's the most they're ever going to have?
No, it just means that they'll always have, and that's the importance of education. You can always address it and help it, but this is when they really have internalized it due to all the external visualization, mirroring from parents. They get that information through their brain as young as 9. Boys we're not seeing, but this is the challenge, that boys are just as important to understand that as well. And one of the things you're going to hear me repeat is that boys are just as important. You know, we often address the girls, but boys are just as important. Okay, and what role does sexuality play at this stage? Okay, so what we're looking at is this combination of self-esteem and sexuality. Importance of exploration, that means exploring their bodies, gender role models, and expression of masculine and femininity. And these are important parts, and it starts very, very young. Okay? Next slide. Okay, 0 to 7 years of age, what are children's needs at this stage? Again, there is this weaving of self-esteem, foundation, and how it plays into sexuality, and how important it is at the beginning. Okay, so their needs are physical and emotional. So at this age, what physical needs do young children need? We've got some young children, parents of young children. What do they need? What are some of their needs? You may not answer because you've already answered, and Alex can't answer either. Back there. Right, so they need basic needs. So they need basic physical needs of being, learning about their bodies and taking care of their bodies and diapering and, toilet training and all that kind of thing. So the physical needs are very important. But along with the physical needs are emotional needs. So what do that age group need emotionally?
Hugs and touch and praise.
Right. All right, to feel safe. I'm going to keep coming back to that feeling of safe, reassurance, and security. Right. Healthy peer interaction. How many have the young ones? Okay, so what do they look like on a playground? What do those young ones look like on a playground? You're going to hear me say this, I have a 3.5-year-old grandson, and I go with him on the playground, and I'm always watching how he interacts with, his peers. And sometimes he does it really, really well, and sometimes he doesn't do it really, really well. And so really watching them, interact with peers. And as they get older, it's parallel. And at the beginning, it's just sort of moving back and forth. But their peers are very important. We talked about safety and security, healthy boundaries. What are healthy boundaries for a 0 to 7-year-old? What do you think about healthy boundaries? What would you instill?
Safety, don't stick your finger in a light socket, go to bed on time.
Right. Okay, so all those basics, because what are you doing? When you create boundaries, even for the young ones, what are you starting to build? Confidence, okay? All right, so confidence, trust in oneself, education, your knowledge of what's safe and what's not safe, okay? And again, this is all an internalization of feeling good about oneself. And then, we start to weave in about sexuality. They sort of go hand in hand. Consistency in those boundaries. How many here are really good, and you don't have to answer this question, how many here are really good at consistency? Whoa, that's amazing. Okay, what's the challenge with consistency? What's the challenge when we know that those boundaries are really good for them, but we bump into consistency? And you're the one who raised your hand about consistency.
The hardest part is you have to be willing to alter your plans to be consistent and to deal with other parents' rules versus your rules, I think, are the hardest part of it.
That was really profound, is that you've got to sort of take care of yourself and step forward and, really know that this is the most important thing for them. When you're not consistent, what's the backslash? What's the problem with that? When you're not consistent, what's the challenge with that?
Then they don't believe what you say, and you have to repeat yourself over and over because they know they can get away with it after a certain amount of time.
Right. And when we talk about this, when we go to the high schoolers, is it just as important to be consistent with the older ones?
Yes. I'm just going to say, if there's no, kind of where the boundary is, they're constantly pushing out, where is the boundary, trying to find it.
Right. And then they don't feel safe. And when you are consistent, what do they feel? Safe, and then they feel confident, and they feel loved. And that's we're talking about all those basic needs that everyone needs that they can internalize, then they make better choices, okay? Comfort with their own bodies, all right? Here's another story. So the other day we were at the park in Laguna. So if you were at the park at Laguna on Saturday, you probably saw a little redhead white child running around the park without his clothes. And a mother hysterical because she couldn't get this child because he was running around without his clothes on. And very comfortable in his body. And I sat there and laughed as a grandmother because I thought it was pretty funny. But that comfort with their body is part of the self-esteem, part of their sexuality, part of this openness. Now, was it appropriate? No, but he got away from us, so we did have a conversation that it wasn't appropriate. But it is watching a young one sort of explore and get comfortable with their body. And the more they feel comfortable with all these other things, the more they sort of fit into their bodies. The other thing is every child is different. So I can't sort of generalize, but I know every child has their own way of expressing that. Okay, next one. What role does the parent play? Okay, so in all of this, what's your role? What's your role to create this healthy, self-actualized child that's going to feel good in self-esteem and in their body so the choices down the road are better? So what role do you play? This mother over here plays the role of being consistent even though she knows it might be a challenge. What else do you play? What else do you do in your child's life to help?
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. Is that always easy? Sometimes it's a challenge, okay? Being a parent is the most challenging thing you will ever do. And you have to have a lot of what?
Patience.
Patience. Yes, you have to have a lot of patience. So what else do you do? So unconditional love. What else? Discipline. And is that always easy? And what are we seeing happen with many children? What do parents become? Their child's best friend. Because what are they afraid of? What are they afraid of? That their child will be mad at them. And so they want to be their best friend. Do your children need you to be your best friend now? They need you to be a parent. When they're 25 years old, then you can have them as best friends. Okay, they come back and they then apologize and they say thank you. They really do. And then you can be their friend. Right now they need you as a parent. Anything else that you need to do? There's a very important thing. Teacher. One more thing, even more important.
Being there for them.
Right. And being there for them, that means you have to do what? I won't point, that's not nice.
It's love, it's sacrificing for them.
You're missing it because it's the hardest thing.
Communicate.
That's it, that's part of it. There's one more thing you haven't gotten. Listening.
Coaching.
Self-care. It's so interesting. Nobody got that one. Why is that? Why is it that the most important thing that needs to be done is the thing we all forget? Are you all going to get on the plane and the first thing you do is give the oxygen to your child? What's going to happen if you give the oxygen to your child? You're going to faint and you're going to be no good. We need to have self-care, and that's the most challenging thing in today's society. But that's the mirror for your child. Okay. Provide proper terminology for body parts in terms of genitalia. Okay, so here's those words. Those words we have such a difficult, what are some of the silly words we use? Pee-pee. Okay, what else? Give them up. Come on, I want to hear them. What are those words? Come on, admit to it. The weenus. Weenus is a combination of penis and wiener. Wow. The junk. Yes, junk in the trunk. Junk in the trunk. Yes, that's it. And then, that's a teen slang. Okay. But usually it's a little bit, it's when a 2-year-old walks around saying that. That could be a little bit of a funny thing. What else do we call it? Okay.
Private.
Our privates. Okay. All right. Anything else? That's it?
Woochie woo.
A woochie woo? Woo! Okay. And of course, we can't forget that Oprah calls it a vajayjay. Okay? So that's her terminology for it. So, yes, proper terminology. Vagina. A vulva. Everybody thinks the vagina is the vulva, the thing that sort of is on the external part. Anatomy-wise, the vagina is not out there. It's inside, not outside. Yes, okay. Anatomy class. What do we call, we didn't talk about breasts. What do we call breasts? Boobs, boobies. Anybody know what a boob is? A mammary gland. But I'm going to go back to boobs for a second. What's a boob? It's a bird. It's a, blue-breasted booby bird. Yes, but what else is a boob? A dumb person. A dumb person. So, proper terminology. These are breasts. Okay, we don't want to be calling parts of our body things that aren't very positive. So, proper terminology. So, I want you all to go home and practice. I'm sure you're all doing it because you're here. I want you to practice, in front of the mirror, saying all these words. Okay? And then you can go to your child. Be open and receptive to questions and curiosity. One of the things we're going to talk about are the fears of parents about being open and receptive. Why is it a challenge sometimes to have these conversations? What's a fear a parent might have if our child walks up to us and says, the obvious one is where babies come from.
That you provide more information than they're ready for.
Yes, you take out the joys of sex. And you show them, things like that. No. So we're going to talk about that in terms of, we're always afraid of saying too much, saying the wrong thing. But we'll talk more about that. The connection made now lays the foundation for the future. So that 0 to 7, because we saw the 9-year-old, girl with her peaked self-esteem, everything that happens now. Now, somebody said to me, if it's peaked at 9, does it mean we're done? Does it mean we can't go back and do positive things? No, never. It's never too late. It's when we don't do it, that's when it's too late. But you can always reinforce. You can always, no matter what age, come back and open the conversation. Earlier is better. Engage children about outside influences. Where are we looking at now? One of the moms came up to me and said, now we're dealing with social media. So what do we do? What are our young people dealing with now?
Sharing photos of
Okay.
their body.
All right, and younger. So they get access to an electronic device and pictures go out, things, too much information. Anything else? What else are they dealing with? What are we concerned about for our children as far as outside influences?
The internet.
Internet? Are we still concerned about their peers?
Yeah.
Okay, sure, absolutely. We go to the electronic piece, but there's still the basics. We want our children to have the very best peer, influences possible. Be approachable. Okay? So what does that mean by being approachable? What does it mean to be approachable, Sandy? Bring up conversation. Be, what else?
Calm.
Be calm. That's right. Watch your body language. There's a great picture you're going to see. Watch it. Our body language tells everything. So yes, that's part of it. So be approachable. Okay, there's the word. There it is. So masturbation. So when we talk about a young child, how many have ever watched your child, young child, when they're taking a nap? And they tend to rock back and forth. I mean, I've often gone into kindergarten classes and they're all taking a nap and they're all in many stages of self-soothing themselves, and it's the cutest thing. So we know that it happens. We know that it's a normal, natural thing. For them, it's not like an adult masturbating or a teenager. This is definitely for a young child self-soothing, but it also gives you the opportunity to talk about privacy. So has anyone ever had that conversation? Okay, can I ask how it went?
Very well.
Very well, yeah. So where's the best place?
In their bedroom.
In their bedroom, in the bathroom.
In the bathroom.
In the bathroom,
Not
okay. Not in the living room. No, not when you're having company on a Saturday night. No, not a good idea. Right.
Not sitting on your lap.
Not sitting on your lap and watching, and that's not uncommon because they feel safe there and they want that self-soothing. So it's not uncommon. So it's really about the boundaries and about teaching them about their bodies and teaching them again that it is normal. It's not abnormal. But here's where intuition comes in. There is a point where it crosses over. And then that's what you have to be careful, because sometimes it does cross over. And then you need to get some help and see what's going on. If it becomes more addictive and it becomes they're doing that versus doing other things. Next one. So now we'll enter the tween years. I love teaching tweens. They're so much fun to teach, especially boys. All right, so the most important thing when we're talking about self-esteem and sexuality, remember, everything is building. That the self-esteem works along with the sexuality. If the self-esteem is intact, the sexuality goes along with it, and then as we get closer to those middle school and high school years, then they have a better internalization about their bodies, and hopefully able to make better choices. And so what does this have to do with you having these conversations? These are ongoing conversations. You pick topics, you open and initiate conversations to support this. So support self-esteem, self-worth, and the challenge of peer pressure, at this point. And at this point, it's very important, especially for whom? Which gender really is very attached to their, group of friends. Okay, so we sort of have this idea of what girls do, how they behave. Do we have the same thing for boys? How many here have seen Boyhood? I really, really suggest, this is a big one for me, that you go out and see this movie. This movie was done over 12 years. And the director, Linkletter, came back every year for 2 weeks and he filmed this boy. And it wasn't autobiographical, but it's a beautiful retrospect of boys and looking into the life of what a boy goes through in adolescence. And I think it's really important, even if you don't have a boy, to sort of take a look at what a boy experiences. They need to have healthy body image. Okay, how are we going to help them with that? How do we help them with healthy body image?
Modeling.
Modeling, that's the most important thing. So that goes back to what I said about self-care. We as parents have to do what for ourselves? What do we need to take care of ourselves. We also have to watch our what? Language and body, all those pieces, because here's another thing that I suggest you watch is the Dove commercial. You don't have to go out and get Dove products, but the new Dove commercial is all about mothers all over the world who've been asked about their own bodies and the things they don't like about their bodies. And then, without putting the mother and the daughter together, the daughter said the exact same thing the mother said. So we are definitely mirrors for our children. So this really is a holistic approach. It takes a whole village, and you're part of that village. Okay? Open dialogue, continue the conversation. This is the part where they really need it. They'll still listen to you, sort of. A little bit of eye rolling, a little bit of attitude, but this is really important. This is one of the reasons our first class starts at 4th grade, because we know we'll still get them in the room and they still will be there with their parent, and there's that open dialogue that started. So what would be a good opening conversation to have with your child? Don't go right to the talk, it's not a good idea. What else can you talk with them about? Is that why you're here? You want me to? I heard that. I'm having trouble hearing, but I did hear that. Okay?
My son brought it up to me. He said there's a video coming in 10th grade, so that might be an interesting
Good one.
thing. Yeah, so we had a long conversation several times.
Right, there's always the video. There's always the class.
It
Where's
was
the
good.
principal? There's always the class, right? Can you warn them, though? So they have a couple of weeks to have...
And they can view it and, beforehand.
So view it, that's really important. So definitely, that's a really good, you're going to have this class. So there's great books out there. The Care and Keeping of You, the AMA book, if you go on our website, we have all resources there for you. And those books are wonderful to just pick up topics. What else? Somebody had their hand raised.
Just starting a conversation about their body and
Yes. Right, because this is the age they're freaked out. These little girls come into my rooms and they're just not comfortable with, I say to them, okay, are you excited about going through puberty? And they all look at me like, are you kidding me? And then I say to them, would you like to stay the same age you are now? And they all go, yes. And the mothers can go, yes. Okay. Boys, not so much. The boys, what do you think the boys want to do at this age? They all say the same thing. What do they want to do at puberty? They all want to get taller. Okay? So it's just so interesting. Girls, they don't want to do this. So this is really interesting. Start to open up the conversation. Little things that are going to happen to them. Emotional changes. How many here have, this age group? How many have girls? How many girls have attitude issues and grumpy? It's like the 7 dwarfs. Remember the 7 dwarfs? How many's living with one of the 7 dwarfs in your house? Yes, you're all living. Right. So it depends on the day. But then again, how many are you going through emotional issues as well? There's no mother in this room that has emotional ups and downs. Yeah, well, okay. So again, those fathers that have, how many fathers here have all daughters? Okay, so it's a good, there we go. What's it like?
It is what it is.
It is what it is. That's why you come here to school. Okay, education. You're here, okay? You are here. You really need to applaud yourself because there's a lot, yes. Because there are a lot of people who aren't here. You're here, that's part of the education. There's great books. We have our classes. There's lots of material. I had one book when my children were born. You have all kinds of information. Next. Okay, what kids need? Healthy peer groups. We know that. What would a healthy, when you look at some peer or a friend, what's a trait you would look for your child? Caring. Happy. Empathetic. You want to teach my class? Who's that over here? Yes. Okay, healthy boundaries. Back to those, remember, we talked about at 0 to 7 about boundaries. We're sort of each stage. You're going to see this at each stage. These are all important parts of being a parent. Okay, so healthy boundaries, that consistency again. Does that consistency get easier or more of a challenge as they get older? More of a challenge. Is it as important? Is it more important in some ways? Yes, it is. Honesty. Okay, so how many parents here, if you want to admit to this, are afraid that their child is going to ask them something They don't want to answer. There's one back there, two. So what, yeah, sort of half. So why is it important to be honest with them though? You don't necessarily have to tell them your whole sexual history. I'm not saying you have to do that. But why is it important? Yes. Are they smart, these kids? They are. And if you lie to them, are they going to know that you're lying to them? Yes. And will they come back to you if you lie to them? No. Where will they go? Places you don't want them to go. So absolutely honesty, reassurance. Especially you're starting at this age because they're starting to push away. But they, again, 3-year-old. So 3-year-old pushes away, but always wants to know that there's somebody behind them that's going to have their back. So reassurance is very important. Still holding, hugs at night, rub their back. Find ways of having healthy intimacy because they need it. That's also mirroring healthy intimacy. Next. Okay, 8 to 12 years of age, parent role. Initiate conversation. Here we go. Again, it's going to be repetitive, but it's so important. So what at 8 to 12 would you need to initiate? We talked about their bodies. What else? Hygiene. Puberty. What else?
Here's what's going on.
Okay. Right. And you also want to open up the conversation so you can get information from them. And the more you open it up, the more, depending on your child, be willing to come to you. A primary educator, you are. Don't ask the principal to be your primary sex educator. That's not his job. It is our job. And it's probably one of the most challenging jobs, but it's the most important job. And when we talk about sex educator, it doesn't mean your only job is one day on a Saturday in the middle of whenever you sit down to have the talk. That doesn't make you the sexual health educator. It's, Cheryl?
Oh, I just had a quick question.
Okay, let me just finish that. It's an ongoing conversation. And it isn't just about sex, it's about their body. It's about their, social, everything, how they feel, that self-esteem, and their bodies, the sexuality. That's what an educator is. Beyond being a parent, you really are the primary educator. Cheryl?
What if your child is too shy to talk about? Like, I bought the book and everything, and my daughter's like, I don't want her.
How old is your daughter?
11.
Okay, I'm going to now we have a class, all right? And the reason our classes work so well is because oftentimes the parent tries to have that conversation, and that's what the child does. You put them into a group, that synergy of a group, and all these little girls or all the boys are all asking questions and curious, and there's something about it that sort of opens up the doors for them to feel comfortable, and then it allows the parent to have the ongoing conversation. One of the things most of the parents say to me is, now we can talk, because now I feel she feels or he feels comfortable. So that's one of the ways to do it, and you just keep gently, initiating the conversation. Don't give up, because oftentimes we give up when they do that. Don't give up, and don't be afraid of the eye rolling or the attitude.
I find that the conversations happen a lot more when we're like in the
Car.
or we're not exactly looking at each other.
Yes.
She's a little uncomfortable.
Right.
So I think that might help. If you don't say I've got the book and I'm ready to talk. That's hard. But if it's more like, I'm driving, I'm not looking at you, and so blah blah blah. I think for my kid, that's when she starts to talk.
It's a good one. Sometimes at night when if you're still putting them to bed, anytime when they're at their, quiet and you can get them, but cars and at bedtime are really good places to do it. Okay, next.
What age is that for the class that you recommend?
We started 4th grade for the girls, 4th, 5th grade for the boys. That's our one time. Then we have one for 5th and 6th grade, one for middle school, and one for high school.
Parents are part of the class.
They are part of the class. They are part of the class. Healthy role model. That was the most important thing, is a healthy role model. And that's taking care of yourself. And monitor media consumption. And it's a challenge, but it's the most important thing. Yeah.
Use things like movies as a reason to talk, with beyond the boundaries.
Right. Make sure that you review the movie and you listen to music. A parent really does need to sort of educate themselves in so many ways before they can use that as a tool. They're listening to a lot of music, so listen to the music. All these things that they're doing, parents have to become very savvy about. That was a really good point. Thank you.
And I have my kids go on Common Sense Media.
Yes.
And then they have to then give me a report of why I should take my time to go see if they could see it or read or listen to
Perfect.
that. And then if they convince me, I'll go and...
What was that?
Common Sense Media. It is a great website. It's probably one of the best websites out there now for parents to get information about shows, social media, just about anything. It was created by a man who's been in the business of child education for a very, very long time.
So I'll just give you a plug. My daughter Cheryl, my daughter went to these classes, and they were fabulous, and we opened up conversations by just handing out words and doing all these different kinds of, it was wonderful. And she came back to me and said, I'm so glad that you took me to these classes. So I'm just giving you a little plug, because we did the whole thing.
Harris poll, 90% of parents want to be the primary sexual health educator for their children, but only 4% actually do. Share your morals, values, and your beliefs.
So where's that other education coming from? Media.
Internet.
It's external. It's external it goes back to if it's not initiated in the home. And they need it, they want it, they crave it. They may not come up to you, but it's there. The curiosity is there from early on. So if they don't get it from you...
It's not primarily media or not primarily peer group?
It depends on the child, depends on the gender. The boys will probably go, obviously, nowadays, we're talking about 9-year-old boys engaging in pornography. I mean, these are the kind of statistics that are out there. If they have any access to an electronic device, they're going to access all kinds of information, and from their peers, but mostly now from electronic devices. Girls from their peers, and where do their peers get it? So maybe when you were growing up, you could access places that weren't as dangerous as they are now. But they are accessing this information because they're curious. The bottom line is they're curious.
Well, this is important because we all assume here that we're part of the 4%. The fact is that if that is the true statistics, our kids are going to be hanging out with that other 90%.
That's right. Is this forum open to everybody in Laguna Beach? Okay, so what percentage of all those parents are you? You're not 4%. So you are the parent who is concerned. I'm speaking to the choir. I'm saying things, you are looking, I know, you're looking for that one little gem that's beyond what you're already doing. I know that. You're waiting for it. You are all doing it. You all know this. I shouldn't be speaking to you, but we're here to sort of get that gem and sort of get some more information and realize that you're doing the right things. Okay? All right, 13 to 17, feelings versus behaviors. That they can have feelings. They can exhibit, all these feelings, emotions, sexuality, but do they have to act on it? No. Now, it's that whole conversation of abstinence and, we want them to abstain until they're, what's the average age of marriage nowadays? Okay, 35 or 40? Okay, so, works for me. I mean, if you can get them to do that, I really applaud you, all right? Here's the challenge with that, is that, how old were we living to not that long ago? Not now when we're living to a 90 and 100. How old were we living to? 40s or 50s, we were dead, gone, okay? And that's why we're still hardwired to procreate when, where, how old? Yes, and now we're saying to them, don't do it. We'll give you some hormones, we're going to sexualize you with all these visual things, but don't have sexual feelings, and don't do it. So we need to give them healthy outlets. This age group especially, because they're hardwired to be sexual. This is, this is a reality. This is also the time of sexual identity. We're in a good time now where we can acknowledge that there is a continuum of sexuality. That some people are at one end of the continuum in their sexual identity and the other, and everywhere in between. It's a rainbow. And to help them acknowledge that, because they're questioning that. And it may be normal questioning, but they are questioning their identity. They need information on STIs. What was that statistic on sexually transmitted diseases? 9.1. And that statistic is low. We don't have all the information as far as that's concerned. They need to have birth control information in terms of not that we expect them to go out and engage, but they need to, because if they are, they need to know that there are risks with all methods. And my administrative assistant brought me some information. Now they're starting to put IUDs in teenagers. So they need you, again, let's go back to the fact you need to be educated. You need to have this information because if they have access to social media, they can access anything now. But they need somebody to talk to about this because beyond these things, they need to talk about their feelings and concerns and their curiosities. Healthy outlets. Well, I mean, yes, masturbation is one of them. All right, that's part of it. But also sports and giving back, volunteerism. I think that's so important because it really helps the self-esteem, which then really supports, the feeling they don't need to engage in anything sexual. Consequences. And consequences go with everything. And that's a conversation to have with your child. What's the consequence of drinking? What's the consequence of, skipping a class? Anything that is something they may be thinking about. Okay, next. 13 to 17, what kids need. Healthy peer groups, basic needs met, healthy boundaries, consistency, same thing. Absolutely the same thing in each developmental stage. Probably even more so. Parents' role, initiate the conversation. Discussion of high-risk behaviors. They're out there. Okay, drugs and alcohol. What are the 4 most common drugs that children are engaged, teens, middle schoolers are engaging in? Alcohol, marijuana, prescription, your medicine cabinet, and now heroin. Okay? So they need to have this information. And if you're concerned, what can you do? If you're concerned that your child is taking drugs, principal, what can they do?
Oh, sorry.
I put him to sleep, oh my goodness.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What can parents do if they suspect their child is
From a
taking...
school perspective, you can come, there's always taking pediatrician, things like that. From a school perspective, you have a counselor, a school psychologist, we have numerous resources that you can come to that kind of help you through that process.
Right, and you can also do your own drug testing at home. It's possible. So all those things. This is one of the most important things now. Share your morals, your values, and beliefs. They need that just as much as everything else. What are your morals? What are your values? And what do you believe in? Next. All right, parents' role. Initiate the conversation. Discuss high-risk behaviors. Get the primary educator. Remember, you are the most important person in your teen's life at this point. Yes, their peers are. It's not to say their peers aren't. You still are the most important person.
I just want to say, it seems like sometimes there's sending mixed messages to your kids because you're going out and you're having wine with dinner with your friends and your kids are with you and you're telling them, don't drink alcohol, it's bad for you, or you're wearing shorts that are really short and you're telling your kids, you can't wear those, you know, so I think sometimes, like you were saying, being a positive role model, sometimes parents, they want to do what they want to do, but then they don't want their kids to do it, so.
Yep, that's true. So the answer to that is that there's a couple of things. First of all, you're an adult. And when we're talking about alcohol, you're an adult, and that's a little bit of a difference. As far as how you look, what you present yourself, the reality of it is yes, that has an impact. Anything a parent does has an impact on the child because they see those things and they will emulate them. So you do need to be aware of that. But there's that parameter of being a parent and being able to do certain things like drink alcohol. And then there's one of how you dress, how you act, what you say. So those are the things that are important to look at. Will everybody do it? Not necessarily. But it's what you do is the most important thing.
I think parents are the most important siblings
Are they important?
in terms of,
Depending on what day it is. You know, she asked about siblings, are they important? I think siblings are important.
they pick up on what the other one's doing, how they're dressing, you know,
Sure.
that sort of thing. So sometimes I feel like it doesn't matter what I'm saying or what I'm doing. You know, his older brother's doing something that's more important. So.
An older sibling probably will, in some ways, you know, be more important or feel more important than the parent. Because oftentimes at this stage, how do your children look at you? How do they view you at the teenage stage? You're old. You're really old. You're really old. And are you very smart? Do you know anything? No, you don't know anything. And are you interfering with their life and everything like that? So you're really a bother for them, okay? That's the bottom line. And if there's an older sibling, of course, you know, there's a good possibility they're going to look towards the older sibling. All that may be true, you're still the parent. And that's what it comes down to. You're still the parent, the consistency, the boundaries, it's all those things. It's not your job to be their best friend, okay? But those are conversations. Yes, you may look at your brother and he looks like he's having a great time. This is your age. Has anyone ever had that experience with the older sibling and how to deal with that? Yes.
And how to deal with it? No,
Okay, we don't know how to deal with it, but it has happened. All those things, that's true. Or they come home and they say they have a friend and the friend...
Well, and ours is usually the other ways. You let the littlest one get away with things I never get away with. That's more of a conversation.
Right, and that's called guilt.
Exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, he has worn me out first.
Right.
Yes, you guys
Right.
wore me out first. The rules are the rules. We're still holding the rules.
That's right.
But yes.
And you're still mean and nasty and all those
Yes, I
things.
look forward to that cup.
That's right. 25 years, it changes a little bit. Hold in there, you know. Okay, now we want to identify things. So, okay, the brain. This is really important. So we're going to shift a little bit. We've done the foundation. Now I want you to look at what's happening in the brain. So the brain has dynamic changes right now. This is from about 10 all the way through up until 25. What happens at 25? Do you know what happens? According to the car rental, what happens at 25? Car rental places. Right. Wisdom. When they all reach 25, they're wise. Is that true? Are we wise? How many here have reached that point? That's what the car rental says. 25, you can rent a car. Up until then, they're not letting anyone younger than 25 into a car. So, dynamic changes are happening. Somebody said prefrontal lobe, this is where most of it's happening. Starts in the back, moves to the front, and we started learning about this several years back when we actually saw MRI imaging of the brain growing and shedding and growing and shedding. So part of what you're dealing with, besides this hormonal child, you're also dealing with a brain that's going through dramatic dynamic changes, potential negative issues, and we'll look at the strategies for it. Okay, prefrontal lobe. focus, forethought, impulse control, organization, judgment, motivation, risk-taking. How many here have children who are really focused? 1, 2. How many here have children who, these are teenagers now, most of this is our teenagers, who really think out what they're about to do. Okay, the same 2 people are raising their hands. Everybody go to their house, figure out what's going on, okay? So, forethought, impulse control. How many here have children who have really good, 2, impulse control. How many here have, and they're organized?
A different child.
Different child.
Different child.
Okay, how many here have children who have really organized bedrooms? How many here have children who don't have really organized bedrooms? How many here close the door and walk past it and pray that something doesn't crawl out? So these are all the things that are changing, growing, and maturing during this period of time. Then we hand them a phone. Okay, we hand them a phone with internet access, all right? This is the brain happening. Internet access, and to get onto the internet, to YouTube, and to learn all kinds of information when the brain is going through these changes. So this is also why self-esteem, information, parent getting involved, because if you are part of this educational process along with the school and the rest of their community, this is what helps these young people to grow. They need to have, information to help them focus. They need to have support to help them to mature. That's one of the reasons, helping, when they go to a party, what's going to happen? Is there alcohol, driving, all these things leading up to big issues. Helping them is really important during this period of time because this brain really is very immature. Does anybody watch the Zits cartoons? Yeah, that kid is really goofy, and he's doing really goofy things. If you want to see something really funny, that's exactly what's happening. And it's important to acknowledge the fact this is true. Now, do you go home and say, I understand why you're doing what you're doing, and I will not bother you anymore because it's your brain that's growing, okay? So we're going to sit down and have a nice little conversation because I know your brain and you've got hormones and you're going through all kinds of things. It's going to be okay. No, this is really helping them. But it also means you have to be proactive, okay? And it's affected by hormones. Yeah, all those things. Next. Consequences. So if those needs aren't met, if the brain isn't supported, and supported with you, but also with food, what does the brain need? What does every brain need? So I'm going to back. What does it need? Sleep. And how many of your teenagers, those that have teenagers or middle schoolers, their children have difficulty falling asleep? Okay? That's because the brain is going through something called circadian rhythms. It's shifting. And then how many of your children have electronic devices and stuff in their rooms? Okay? All that overstimulates the brain. And then when they have to go to school the next day, they're tired. And then they stop at Starbucks, and what do they get? They get a coffee that has 2 things in it. Sugar and caffeine. Okay, so we have now entered a drug into their brain. They're tired, and we want them to sit in class, and we want them to learn and focus. Think about even you, when you wake up tired and we put coffee into you, and you have to get into the car and take them places, and how do you feel? This is an immature brain. So they need to be fed smoothies in the morning with lots of vegetables and fruit and some protein. Get something into them. Make sure they sleep. What else do they need? They need lots of exercise. And they need downtime as far as the electronic devices. But these are the issues that we start to see. Depression. Okay, so who has the highest rate of actual suicide? Boys or girls? Boys. Okay, because they use methods that are successful. Girls, even though they may attempt it, their methods aren't quite as successful, but boys have the highest rate of suicide. So we need to address boys' issues as well.
Can you give us just a few examples of clues for depression? Let me just go quickly.
Okay, apathy or anger. So you could have apathy, you could have anger, you could have withdrawal, you could have somebody who not doing well in school. They would maybe most of them withdraw. That's probably one of the most obvious ones. Or you could have them put on a really good front, and you may not know that they're in that kind of pain, and they may put on a good front, and you may not know. So that's why parents really need to be sensitive to any, even minor shift that doesn't quite feel right, and be willing to be proactive and ask questions and do discovery to see if something has shifted. Eating disorders, their eating pattern changes, sleeping pattern changes, even music. I mean, all those nuances that tell you something isn't quite right. And with boys, it might be a little bit different because boys tend to be quiet, tend to be, more to themselves. But that's why we're seeing it more with them. Teenage lack of impulse control, teen pregnancy, substance abuse, joining wrong groups, eating disorders, cutting classes. And so those are the consequences. Okay, strategy. Remember I said dealing with teens is sometimes like dealing with a 3.5-year-old. My administrative assistant wanted to put my 3.5-year-old grandson's face up there because that's what he looks like oftentimes. They're independent, they're defiant, and basically they're going in all different directions. Support systems, physical support. Okay, again, it's really important to help them feel comfortable with their bodies. Help them, good food whenever you can get it in them. Because what do most teenagers live on? I'm okay with pizza. Pizza is not one of my things that, what else? Sugar, fast food, sugar, caffeine, and not only their brains. You're feeding their brains, you're also feeding their bodies. They need to have healthy food. It's really important. We're seeing obesity, we're seeing type 2 diabetes. They need to have healthy food. Social, they do need a social system, they need a healthy social system. So all of this comes back to awareness. Psychological, goes back to what you asked me about depression. We need to be aware of what they're going through and to acknowledge it and to get help if we need it and to talk with them. Maybe talk to their peers. One thing in my class, we talk about self-esteem. I say to the girls or boys, if you have a friend that you have done everything and they don't seem to be responding, go tell an adult. Share that with your children. That's really important. Okay. Parental fears. Okay. So fear of giving incorrect information, being embarrassed, not a priority, waiting for your child to come and ask, afraid information will lead to sex, your own sexual issues, hard to admit your child is sexual, child too young. Okay, so if you're afraid of giving incorrect information, what can you do? Take a class, all right? What if they come to you and you don't, you're just waiting, okay, hold on. What if they come to you and you don't know the answer? What can you do?
That you were going to search it together. I mean,
right.
That's what we do, like, oh, let's check it out.
See, I told you all knew the answer. You guys all know the answer, but right. This humanists, we're so afraid that we will be wrong or, less than, our own insecurities. They come to you, you don't know the answer. That's what Google is for. I don't know.
And my daughter, she came to me asking a bunch of questions, and I was like, let's check the book. I have a great book on that. And then all of a sudden, she wanted every book on it. And I was like, well, let me look at the books before I buy everybody. And she didn't want to talk for a while. She just wanted to read all the books on every topic.
But you opened up the door and you made it safe and you were honest, and that's the most important thing, is that you can say to them, I don't know the answer. What a unique concept. And often, you know, depending on how old, we'll go and get the information, or I don't know it right now, I will find the information and get back to you. We don't need to answer it right. We also think we have to answer it just right then and there. We don't. We can go and get the information, and we can also include them in the educational process. I think that's really, really important. Being embarrassed. Is it an embarrassing topic? It is. Do we have to get over it? Yes, we do. Because if we don't, they're not going to come to us. It's our issue. We need to get over it. It's okay. We can be embarrassed. Waiting for your, not a priority? Is it a priority? It is a priority, starting from today. Waiting for your child to ask you. What will happen if you're waiting for your child to ask you? You're going to wait for a long time, because if they don't talk to you, one of two things. One, they're not a child that asks questions. Or two, something happened and they don't feel you're approachable. If they don't feel you're approachable because of your body language, something you said, then they will not come to you. When I have taught 14-year-olds, like 7th and 8th graders, and I say to them, go home and talk to their parents about this topic, why do you think they say they don't want to go? What do they tell me about not wanting to go to their parent? What are the issues they're afraid of going to their parent and having these conversations? Say, anger. Okay, so anger, what else?
They think they're not supposed to know those things.
Okay, so, all right, so they're afraid they're going to be judged. They're afraid they're going to be judged. What else?
Parents too busy.
Parents too busy. They're afraid of, you know, how the parent's going to talk to them. They're going to be judged. They're going to assume something's going on. They really are afraid to go and ask parents because of the response they're going to get. And I think it's so important that we become approachable so they will come to us. Your own sexual issues. And that's, you know, most of the people I talk to. You know, that's one of the reasons I created a program for women, perimenopausal and menopausal, called Martinis and Chocolate, because they're going through their own issues, because many of us are having children later in life. When you're having children later in life, you're going through perimenopause while they're going through you know, puberty. And so we all have issues that might show up, and as they enter puberty, it pushes our buttons. It takes us back to when we were that age. And we sort of project those things, and we have to be really careful, and if it shows up, what can you do about it?
I think you have to acknowledge it.
Yes. And once you've acknowledged it, what can you do about it?
Learn from it, make changes if you think they need to.
Right, right. We have to acknowledge it, that there's things happening. We're feeling things, pushing buttons, and get some help. You know, get some help for us, because we're the mirror. If the healthier we are, the healthier they are. Hard to admit your child is sexual. From the minute they're born, they are sexual. Do we want them to be engaged in sex? No, we don't. But we do have to acknowledge they're sexual, and that's why we need to talk about it. Child is too young to have these conversations. It's never too young. Okay. Where will your fears and concerns get you? So if you have these fears and concerns and it paralyzes you and you don't do anything, then you have problems. Because then they're going to go to those places we talked about. Okay. So, ambiguity of responsibility. Who's going to have this conversation? So how many here, well, I'm not going to ask you that, but don't we go, all right, they come to you and they go, now you go, ask your mother. Your mother knows everything. Just go to your mother. She's the one. In my classes, I have most of the population is mothers and daughters. Small percentage of fathers and sons. May I ask the fathers that are here, may I ask you, would you feel comfortable, do you have a son or a daughter? One who's right in front of you, the one who asked me. Yes, you.
I have a daughter.
You have a daughter, okay? You feel comfortable? Now, one of our classes really is a father-daughter class. How would you feel about attending them?
Well, you softened me up pretty good.
No, I do not want to go to that class. I have the fathers who walk into my class and they're growling. My wife made me come to this class. I'm not happy. But once they're there and they have that experience with their sons or their daughters, they really get this appreciation and open up. So yes, getting fathers, having them have this experience with their children, whether it's a daughter or definitely a son, is really important. Okay. It's everyone's responsibility. The more I think about it, the more confused I get. That's what we all look like, okay? Isn't it really everybody's responsibility? Okay, tools and suggestions. So, yes, here's all the issues. And you get to ask me any question you want in just a second. But here's some of the tools that I suggest as well, all right? And it's repetitive. And I hope there's just that spark, because you, I'm imagining, are really the people who are doing the best jobs. So I hope there is that spark here that's really going to help you. Start young. It's never too early. How many here have the Staples thing that goes, it's, easy, it's easy, I love that thing. So it's never too easy to start. Initiate the conversation. Keep it simple. Less is more. We want to, we're adults. We want to have long conversations with them and give them all the information. No, try to access what they're asking you. So for younger ones especially, and for older ones, again, do keep it simple. Be aware of your body and your tone, and don't look like that. Okay? Is that practice in the mirror before you're going to have any conversations, so they know that you're not petrified of what's going to happen. And the other thing is, have some humor around this. Look at your faces. You're all so serious, okay? This is pretty funny. It really is. Some of this stuff is pretty funny. Do you think what happens to our bodies? I mean, they're little kids and all of a sudden things pop up all over the place and they have hair and it's really funny. And all the things that happen to us. And even if you remember back some of the things that embarrassed us, now we think about them and they're pretty funny. So we have to have a sense of humor, because if we take ourselves too serious, this becomes a serious thing. And that's what they interpret. Okay. Love that picture. Okay, check out what they may actually be asking you. With young children, again, they may just ask you, where did I come from? And we think it's something where babies come from, and it's really, they came from, Laguna Beach. So, we need to be careful what our children ask. Okay? And even our teenagers, what are they really asking? Because we're making assumptions, we're projecting. Find out and then, what do you think? You asked me this. Keep going back to critical thinking. One of the things I really, really, really support is critical thinking. Remember, I'm asking you questions. In every single one of my classes, it's not about lecturing, it's about asking questions. What do you think? You come up with the answer. I want you to come up with the answer. The class that Madeline took, it was all about asking Madeline questions. Okay. Look for those teachable moments. They're all over the place. All you have to do is stand still, and there are teachable moments everywhere now. And have these conversations with them. Put down your cell phones. Put them down and have conversations with them. Take them on dates. Fathers, take your daughters. Take them on dates. Put down the phone and just listen. You're going to hear me say listen in a second. Be willing to be honest. Okay? And it's okay not to have all the answers. Next. Okay. Check out what all right, sense of humor, Bill Cosby. Have you ever accessed any of his tapes? Go back and access his tapes, and he talks about his brain-dead children. And he talks about all the experiences with his brain-dead children. And it's the funniest thing, the things that they're doing. And that's humor. And that's important. We need to have that. Look at your own fears and discomforts. Remember what you said back there. Sometimes we need to stop and look at our own fears and some of our own discomforts. If we do, if we're honest, if we're going to help them. The healthier we are, the healthier they're going to be. Listen, listen, and listen. And it's the most difficult thing we've ever done. Remember, I want you to think about the last time your child asked you a question, and what were you thinking about as they were asking you the question? What were you thinking about? Were you thinking about the question, or were you thinking about, well, I have to...
When will they stop talking?
When will they stop talking? Okay. What else are we thinking about as they're asking us our question? How to respond. That's it. Okay, so we analyze it. Okay, they're asking me this question, so I'm going to. So are we really listening? Not necessarily. What else are we thinking about? Say what? Why can't they ask their father? What am I going to make for dinner? Am I going to be late for? Yes. Practice. When I was in nursing school, they made us sit at the bedside of a patient and listen. Couldn't say a thing. We just go shake our head. It was the most difficult thing I ever had to do. Because I wanted to talk. I mean, I had things to say, and they told me I couldn't talk. So, yes, practice just listening. And you can have a time limit. You know, they can't go on and on and on and on, but really, because they're going to tell you things. And the other thing I found out is they're really smart. So really, really get to know them and learn who they are and all the amazing things that they really are. Because we're so busy moving from place to place and doing all these things. Discuss objectification. I was afraid I couldn't say that word when I practice it. Of the opposite sex. So even in my classes that are for fourth graders, they already have preconceived ideas about the opposite sex, and they're not very positive. So really be careful what you say, because early on they already have these ideas about the opposite sex, and they're not particularly positive. And then young people will actually say those things to some person, and it's not very nice. And if they do it young, can you imagine what happens when they get older and older? Fathers and male mentors are powerful role models. But then again, all parents are positive role models. What role does a father play with a daughter? Or a male role model? What part does a father play with a daughter? This one's answering all my questions. I want somebody else. What?
Models, future mates.
Yes, models. So you have 3 daughters. How old are your 3 daughters?
Just one.
Oh, 1 daughter. Oh, you only have 1 daughter. Okay. And you are a very important part of her life. So models, future male role models. Okay? Anything else? What else does he do?
Stability.
Stability. Okay? Her self-esteem, a lot of tenderness. This male, and it could be either a father or a male role model. There's something a daughter needs, a girl needs. How many had strong father, soft, wonderful, strong father figures? Okay, so about half of you. How many would have liked a strong, loving, strong father, right? And so they play a huge part. And so it's important to get that male role model involved in this. Yes.
I think also you have love and acceptance from your dad. You're not going to be looking for it in another male.
Right.
Somewhere else.
Right, and that's exactly what happens, is that the statistics that we're seeing, a lot of the girls who are acting out, thank you for bringing that up, a lot of the girls that are acting out is that they didn't get that, and so they're looking early on for somebody to love them, to, mirror, how cherished they are, so they do need that. They need it early on, absolutely, absolutely. That was a really good point. Okay, and boys need positive mother role models as well. Why? What do we, as oftentimes being the mother, do we do just about everything? Okay. Is there a point that we need to sort of separate from our boys?
Yeah.
Yes, it's very important.
Maybe, a lot of it has to do with that you're really their first introduction to the opposite sex.
Yes, just like the father plays that, so you are that introduction. And that other piece of we play such an important part. Oftentimes they ask, can they come to my boy class? And I say, as long as there's a father figure, I really would appreciate if the father comes, because they need that bonding just like the daughter needs it as well. We need that balance. And I know that there, with same-sex, marriages and relationships, they do get that as well. It's just awareness of what our psyche needs as well. And it's acknowledgement, so it helps them to grow with their self-esteem, their own sexuality. It really helps with that growth in future years. And it is something that started young. Okay, blended families, and we have a lot of those, should at least be on the same page, if at all possible. If not, then the parent who's taking these classes needs to do the very best they can at this point. It is a challenge. It worked for the Brady Bunch. Come on, it worked for the Brady Bunch. Just, can you imagine how healthy they are now? It worked for them. Always include your morals and values. And again, if something does, I really teach intuition. If something doesn't feel right, then go get help. And books, technology, and take one of our courses. And all the information about our courses in those little cards back there. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. Okay, so any questions? And then I'll go over that in just a second. Any questions?
I have a question for principal. How can, if our child wants to see a video ahead of time, the puberty video, how do we get it?
So typically there's a viewing time set up. You have a take-home model. I need to check to see what different districts I've been at. They've had kind of, that was VHS way back when. Where you can take it home and rent it out. I'll find out.
That was my car.
Absolutely.
Because my child, I think, he's worried about laughing and he's nervous, and I think if he saw it ahead of time at home, he would feel more.
Yeah, you just see kind of what media it's in, and again.
So the question I have is there, you came here looking for something very specific. Is there anything that you need, so when you walk away here, that you feel like you can take something back into your own lives and really access them? Is there anything you need?
I have a lack of sleep here, so my brain's not functioning.
Oh, you've noticed
It
it.
doesn't caffeine, so we're good there. As far as what information to provide at the different ages, because obviously you're not going to give a full biological explanation to a 7-year-old. So we need to give resources as far as what type of information at different age levels.
Yes, that's a great segue into this, okay? So 0 to 7, I think the basics. They need the basics 0 to 7 as far as biology, feeling comfortable in their body, right terminology, and that level of self-esteem. Those two pieces are probably the most important part. On my website, lots of resource in age appropriateness, okay? So I'm going to go to our classes because they address it. So our first class is Puberty and Guide Talk for 4th graders, 4th graders or 8 to 10, and Guide Talk is 9 to 10. And in those, we deal with just the basics. It's 2.5 hours. It's just the basics. It's physical and emotional changes. We talk about hygiene, especially those stinky boys, and stinky girls. So I've got to do both, stinky girls and boys. And nutrition, because I'm really, really, really into that. And we do a little bit of reproductive anatomy and menstruation for the girls, not for the boys. They don't. So just the girls. And so that's the basics with that class. Then we do our rites of passage class for 10 to 12-year-olds. So a little bit about puberty. For girls, lots about menstruation. Then we talk about self-esteem, peer pressure, social media, and then we talk about where babies come from. And that's the best class, because everybody walks into that class going, the body language is amazing in that class. And it's one of the best classes I teach, because it really is very gentle, it's very sacred, and it's a great class. We have our middle school one, which is called The Bridge, and that's the one about parent-child communicating together and having a bond. And then we talk about the issues they need to know about: self-esteem, relationships, STDs, and those topics that are really important. For teens is, I only have the parent for part of it. Most of it is just the teen and the educator, and we talk about the issues: relationships, self-esteem, STDs, birth control, consequences, alcohol and drugs. Also very powerful. Besides this presentation, we have one called Bodies in Motion for 0 to 7, and then Inside the Teen Tween Brain. So we've really created a continuum of courses for parents, for agencies to engage, to bring me to, like here, and for parents to get the support system. That's the most important thing for me, is the support system for parents. Yes.
I have a 9.5-year-old 4th grader and a just turned 12 6th grader. When you go to two different, where do you?
The 9.5-year-old needs the beginning one.
Okay.
And then the 12-year-old needs the more extensive one. They're very different stages. They are at different stages. Okay? So as I said, this is the most important thing for me, is to help parents. So you have the information to feel comfortable talking to your children. And children who take our courses, just like Sandra said, really walk out of there feeling empowered and healthier and more willing to talk with their parents.
I have 10-year-old twin girls, and they've already started developing. So with the rites of passage...
Probably. And they're in 5th grade?
They're in 4th.
They're in 4th grade.
But I held them back a year.
Okay. I would probably think rites of passage would be that one.
About kids on the spectrum, and I'm not saying the lower end of the spectrum, but the kids who are basically high on the spectrum, is it the same sort of process, and do you offer a class for those parents and kids?
Right, I do. It's sort of designed for specifically, depending where they are in the spectrum. And I usually try to get a group together that, Now, I have had children in my regular classes who are, if they're on the higher end of the spectrum, and as long as I know, then I'm able to, I usually teach that one, and I'm able to sort of work around that. As long as I know up front, it works. I've had all different types in my classes.
But is there development, and I don't mean physical development, but I mean their development in terms of how you would approach it?
Yes.
It's different. Right?
Yes, it is. Their physical development's up here,
Right.
and their social and emotional is down here,
Right.
so it's how you speak, it's how you interact with them is different, but they need it just as much.
But you have resources.
Yes, absolutely. And just talk to me, we can talk about that.
Books you would recommend for our
Um,
Our bodies ourselves.
right.
But I don't know if there's any specific that you...
You've got me where, off the top of my head, I'm so used to, I don't deal in that spectrum as much as I deal in the older ones, and that's why it's on my website. And I would call me, and I'll be more than happy to discuss the books, because I have them all at home, okay?
What about some actual conversation starters for kids who don't have any?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't go to the heavy hitters. First of all, it's take them on a date and talk about music, who's your favorite, actors, your whomever. Start really simple, so you're sort of doing this sort of on the sneaky side a little bit. But start simple, and then, next date. I took this class. I'm sort of curious, what do you think about this? We're talking about puberty. We're talking about funny things. Create that humor, create that openness. Don't go on heavy, don't simple, and just build, because we all think we have to have the talk, it has to be heavy, it has to be big. And the car, I mean, you can have that conversation in the car, but I like that date thing, as well. But keep it simple and just keep building, and find the topics that you want to discuss, and then start bringing them in very gently.
I have a 16-year-old daughter who always wants, she tells me a lot of things, but she always starts conversations, cannot tell Dad. And so, if I say I'm going to tell Dad, then I'm never going to know anything. She does tell me very intimate stuff. So, I have a great relationship with her. But, however, where do I draw the line? I mean, what do I tell Dad? I don't want to betray her, but he's the father and he needs to know these things. But I don't want to lie to her and go, no, I'm going to tell Dad and go behind her back and do it. I do that quite often. I'm like, okay, this is what we talked about. He knows not to go and talk to her about it, but I do want him to know what's going on. This is a situation, this is what's happening, but I don't know where that line is with that.
My concern is triangulation, and at some point we get caught. Is there a possibility, is sitting down as a group, the three of you, and sort of coming up with an agreement, okay, that she needs to be able to speak up. There's certain things she's comfortable only talking to you about, and that there is all an agreement, so you all are on the same page, versus it's like telephone, and sometimes things can cause problems. That's my concern. Is there a way for the three of you sit down and sort of set a stage of what works?
Well, just some topics some things she's told me, I've said, I think I am going to have to sit down with your dad, even though we talked about this. I said, he is more understanding than you think.
Right.
She has a very misconception of what I'm more freaked out when she tells me things than he is.
Sure.
And so I tell her, I'm not comfortable with this.
Right.
I'm going to talk to him about it, and then, and I said, I think you'll be surprised how open he is. Sometimes I feel like she just wants me to go and run and tell him instead. And then sometimes we do have a conversation, the three of us,